Well, hello, darlings. Are we all adjusted? I believe I almost took out my own lighting ring so far. That's exciting. Hello, hello, darlings. Drop your comments in the comments. Good evening. I'm barely dressed. I threw this on as I was walking in. I knew that it wouldn't be decent of me to show up not wearing anything at all. But I am feeling slightly underdressed, so I'm going to do just one thing, just one thing, two things actually. I'm just gonna first we're gonna do that, and then because it's evening, I'm gonna put on my nightcap. So if you've got a nightcap, I highly recommend that you put it on as well. Hello, darlings. Let's climb into bed, shall we? So good to see you. I have made iced tea this evening because I just cannot be buggered to drink hot tea in this situation. Richmond's weather has been, it's been a bit of an abusive boyfriend for the past week or so. Trying to convince me that it's really is good for me and it's comfortable and it's not going to suck the life out of me. But then it went back to its old ways of being just too hot. So my question, as always, is can you hear me? We are trying yet another microphone situation, which is a shotgun mic. So there'll be more rustling, but perhaps the quality of my voice will be better. Last week's was unbearably awful. I apologize. So I'm here with my iced tea, which is green and pineapple, if you'd like a sip. The pineapple's a bit weird, I admit that. And our books, Railsea and The Hitchhiker's Guide. Don't panic, we've got lots to read. All right, let's get into bed, darlings. All right. Okay, so it's a little, hi, Sally. It's a little, the caftan that I'm wearing is a bit tight in the hips. Just gonna not rip anything. Okay, slurp noisily. Actually, I'm just gonna pull this whole thing forward. It's a little bit more informal than I prefer this evening. But can you hear the slurping? Do tell me. I'm very curious if it's going to work or not. So, darlings, it's my birthday week. I will be turning 36 on Wednesday. Huzzah! This will be my second birthday in the Rona times. I can take this banner down. And thank you, Sally. Second birthday in the Rona times. And I actually just don't know how I feel about it, generally speaking. Because I'm already such a creature of my own id that if I want to go do something, I go do it. And if I want to buy something, I buy it. I don't put myself into debt for things. Like, I don't put myself in danger for the purchasing and the acquisition of things and experiences. But I don't feel a sense of deficit if I can help it. I mostly live as abundantly as I can, because feeling deficit, really living inside of the identity of being in a deficit is sickening. It actually is sickening. It makes me sick. So I don't know what to do that's special for my birthday. I don't want to throw a party because those seem to generally be strangely attended in these times, and also I've never really been into that. I used to take people to a bowling alley, and we'd all bowl. We'd dress up in costumes and we'd go to a bowling alley. And that was amazing. That might be a good thing to do. But as it stands, a friend is just going to take me to my favorite restaurant in town and get me drunk. That's what's going to happen. I'm going to give myself permission to not answer emails, to not apply for jobs, to not look for housing. I am going to exist happily. I might do some magic. But mostly I think it's just going to be a day for gratitude and hedonism. I think that's my only plan. So if you have any suggestions, go out and enjoy nature. I'll probably go for a walk. I go for a walk every day, as much as I can. Sometimes they're as short as 15 minutes. Usually they're about an hour or more. It's just the heat. You know, I can't enjoy nature if nature is trying to kill me. That's how I feel about it. Speaking of which, it is balls hot in this room. I just want you to know that. Let's set the picture. Here in the egg, in this beautiful cake box that I painted, that I live in, I've lit a candle to invoke the spirit of communication and clean, easy, technological functioning, and to magnetize people to the space. And I hope that that's working. It smells faintly of frankincense and rain, because it rained today, and I burn frankincense and incense in here most days. It's about 85, and I am schwitzing. So I just wanted to paint you a picture. That's, you know, for every sense, you feel clammy, you smell musk, you hear the whir of the machines and the dulcet tones of my voice. You see just a cacophony of colors. That's what's happening here. Johnny O Twitch is here. I have to call you out, sir, for sending me an amazing gift. Internet, look. I know it's not very good, but I got this ring from Johnny O Twitch as one of my patrons, and I friggin' love it. It is a Metatron's cube design on a ring from Etsy, because I am your Metatron. I love this. I'm so happy. It fits really nicely. I can switch it between. It's very exciting. Okay, is it time to read books yet? I think it's time. What are we doing? Because we went through the most of the hour last time with Hitchhiker's Guide, and we got the two like biggest things out of the story that everyone remembers, which is So Long and Thanks for All the Fish, when the dolphins leave, and the Deep Thought. We were introduced to Deep Thought. So do we continue down the Hitchhiker's Guide? Or do we do some more Railsea, which we introduced a few weeks back? Or do we try and do both for real? 30-ish minutes, maybe a chapter of Hitchhiker's Guide, and then another chapter of Railsea. Vote in the comments. Tell me what you want. And while you're doing that, I'll tell you the other thing that I've been doing this week. So I'm a member at a place called the Orbital Music Park, which is this really, really cool community space for musicians and people who are music adjacent who want to be more musically inclined. And I've been trying to learn more about electronic music making, and specifically sampling and looping. so that I can do concerts live, because I don't actually play any instruments proficiently. I only sing. And I picked up this, I'm going to call it a sequencer, because I don't think it's actually a sampler. They loaned it to me so I could dick around with it and learn. And I am not doing well so far. I don't know anything about electronic music making. I spoke to a friend of mine in the UK who does this. She's badass. And she gave me some very, very basics, like the word sequencer. I was like, all right, cool. And I just like, this is my best explanation. Imagine. Hey, Boseworth, we're going to get started reading in a minute. Imagine. Oh, thank you. That you are a foreign exchange student who has been studying Portuguese from a Portuguese native speaker, and you get the chance to go and be an exchange student, and you are so jazzed because you get straight A's in your Portuguese classes, and you're just so friggin' ready, and you go to Brazil, and you're in Sao Paulo, and you don't know Portuguese. Like, you thought you knew Portuguese, you thought you were ready, but you're not. You are not ready. That is how I feel with learning about electronic music and looping and sampling. I am at sea. I thought I knew Portuguese, but I don't speak Brazilian Portuguese. Like, that's where I'm at with this experience. It's only been a few days. Give me some time. Okay. I've just realized that I am sitting on a blanket that I bought in Morocco, wearing a North African kaftan and a fez with the crescent on it. So we're having a Moroccan style of an evening. And I'm drinking green tea. Green mint tea is a staple in Morocco. Okay. I think you guys voted for Railsea. Yeah, Brazilian Portuguese is nothing like European. Hence my metaphor. Hence my metaphor. I am learning actual Portuguese, by the way. Not Brazilian Portuguese. Okay, so, and you asked about my immersive show. My immersive show is still up. You can actually go and still get a ticket and experience it. It's only $9. I will drop you a link in a moment. It will be up until the 31st through the Cleveland Borderlight Festival. And if you enjoy my voice here, you're really going to love it. It's called Journey to the Kingdom of Hypnos. I'm super fucking proud of it. It's beautiful. And I am #blessed. I am #blessed that it managed to happen at all. Like, I'm just so thrilled and amazed. So I'm going to drop you a thing in the link in the chat. That's a link to the place where you can get a ticket. You can listen to it anytime, anywhere, until July 31st. Please go and listen. It's only $9, 30 minutes. Zalani's going to listen to it tomorrow. I'm so excited. Yay! What's funny is I look up the will call, and I actually see your real names, and I don't know who you are. But you can actually drop notes when you purchase a ticket. It one of the questions is how did you find out about this experience? And then there's another thing leave a note or something like that. You can leave notes in your purchase, and I will actually be able to see them. So just saying. #GlamourHobo. All right. I will mention it again in a minute, but now that we've got a little bit more of a crowd, it's 10:19. I'm already halfway through my glass of iced tea. It's time to read. Yeah, I am so pleased. I am so pleased with it. Thank you all so much. And I do, strangely enough, I know you're all listeners, but if anybody needs a transcript of it because they're hard of hearing, I have those. Please just ask. And I'll probably put up a link. This is bad of me. I will put up a link on that same page where you can go to listen to the embedded file, where you can read the transcript. I will do that tonight. Okay. Railsea. Who was here when we read the first chapter of Railsea? Drop your shit in the chat. We did the prologue. We did number 1 about the bloodstained boy, about hunting the moldy warp on the Railsea. Sally was here. Johnny Twitch was here. All right. There are so many voices in this. I will do my best. I will do my fucking best. But there might be like main characters and then like chorus. Okay. Chapter 2. A meat island. The carcass loomed. Mole carters snared the ropes in its skin, and train-top winches hauled tons of mole flesh and a precious pelt across the ground on which no one would step. Scavenger birds at last flew home, replaced in the sky by Arctic dark bats. In waning light, the moldy warp undertook a last posthumous journey to the butchery wagon, and no illustrations, no flatographs, no salvaged 3Ds, paintings, salt prints, or liquid crystal renditions, and certainly not the arse-achingly dull molars reminiscences Sham had heard too many times could have prepared him for what extraordinarily stinking work followed. That's right. Remember, our main character is named Sham Apsura. And this is his first time on a moldy warp hunt. This might get a little graphic about butchering. So if you're not down with that, close your ears and then I'll signal you that it's safe. The mole was opened. The flatbed truck filled with its spilling remains. Sham breathed shallow at the sight, hollow-chested, as if he was at prayer. The crew hacked, unfolded, peeled, sawed. They grunted and sang shanties. What shall we do with the drunken brakesman? And they sang, A life on the open rails. Overhead, Sunder Nabby conducted their concert with his viewscope. Sham stared and stared. Nothing to do? It was Vernum, broken off from the flensing, a gory knife in his hands. Feeling soft-hearted? Nah, Sham said. Vernam was shirtless in the tight radius of heat around the cutting and the fires, skinny and muscled and sweating mere inches from where the air would freeze him. He grinned a little crazily. Sham could suddenly believe there were only a few years between them. No one needed first aid, but Sham knew Dr. Fremlow would not forbear lending him to the wider crew on a night like this. Vernam's gaze went side to side as he hunted for and found inspiration. Oi! He shouted to everyone, wetly unmaking what had been a mole. Anyone thirsty? A big, tired cheer. He inclined his head and looked meaningfully in Sham's direction. Well, you heard that. Really? Sham said. He even liked Vernon well enough, but really? I'm not even saying an appropriate doctor is my favorite thing to be in the world, but hauling liquor? Don't you have a cabin boy? No disrespect, it's an honorable profession, but is it really my job to lug grog? To grog lug? To grug? Sham said all that, but only in his head. Outside of his head, what he said was, "Yes, sir." And abruptly, Sham ap Surap was right in the middle of that moment, quickly blood-stained. So started the longest, hardest night he had ever worked. From butchery car to mess and back again, and again, and again, running the length of the train, with drinks, with food to keep the strength up, to Fremlow's cabin where the doctor loaded him with bandages and unguents and astringents and analgesic chews for rope burns and sliced up palms, back again to apply them. What reward Sham got lay in the fact that the ribaldry and jokes and excoriations of his laziness, with which he was greeted by the crew unmoling the mole, was more often good-humoured than not. He even, he realized, felt a bit of relief in knowing just what he was to do, the precise nature of his task in those moments. He snatched seconds when he could to sway in stupefied tiredness. Cutting or not, there was no avoiding the blood in that butchery wagon. So Sham became the gore-stained boy, swaying like a young tree, quite red, not knowing what to turn his mind to. He'd been waiting for this, like all the crew, and now here he was, awed, but still not knowing what it was he thought. Still lost. He didn't ruminate on hunting, nor on the medicine he was supposed to be learning, nor beyond wordless aghast wonder at the scale of the mole's bones. He just endured. Sham diluted booze. "More water than that, not as much as that, more molasses, don't spill it," snuck a couple of swigs himself. He held up cups of it to the lips of those whose hands were too entrail slippery to grip. Shawsunder, the cabin boy, carried cups too with poise, glancing at Sham with a nod of rare, imperious solidarity. Sham lit fires, heated metal, stoked blazes to keep trypots hot, while railers took skin and fur to be tanned and cleaned, meat to be salted, strips and slabs of fat to be rendered. The universe stank of moldy warp. Blood, pee, musk, and muck. In the moonlight, everything looked splashed with tar. In the train lights, that black turned to the red of the blood it was. Red, black, and as if he drifted off like a paper scrap out to rail sea and looked back, Sham envisioned the mateys as a little line of lights and fires, heard the music of its tools and train songs, swallowed in the enormous southern space of ice and freezing rails. Everything spread out from the center of the universe that at that moment was the moldy warp face, the set snarl, the dark-furred leer, as if even in its death the great predator did not lose its contempt for those who had outrageously snagged it. "Ahoy!" Dr. Fremlow nudged him, and Sham lurched. He'd been asleep and dreaming where he stood. "All right then, Doctor," he stuttered. He tried to work out what it was he would do. "Go put your head down," Dr. Fremlow said. I think Mr. Vernon once. And when did Mr. Vernon pass his medical license? Am I a doctor? Am I your boss? I prescribe sleep. Take one once nightly. Now." Sham didn't argue. Just then, for once, he knew precisely what it was he wanted. To sleep indeed. He shuffled out of the heat, away from the empty rib room that had been a mole, into the swaying corridors, towards his little nook, one shelf bed among many, through snores and farts of those who'd come off shift already. The songs of the butchers behind him were Sham's ragged lullaby. How we doing? Can you hear me all right? How's this mic doing today? Different mic, different day. We're looking for quality as well as volume. Whew. It is so warm in this room. All right. Yeah, stuck in my clothes. I am stuck in my clothes. Ugh, okay. Mic is good? All right, excellent. I'll find a better way of mounting it so it points at me a little bit more next time. All right, chapter 3. Just need another. I have all of the pillows. All of the pillows on my bed are behind me. Oh, that's better. Oh, nailed it. Chapter 3. You know, because I've been learning Portuguese on Duolingo, I actually don't know the word for 3. Are you asking about my mic? You know the answer to that. All right. All right, I actually have a funny story. So today, because I work as a singing telegram as well, today I got tapped to deliver a singing telegram later in the week as Lisa Ford singing Kiss Me Deadly. And they want me to come to a karaoke night and sing Kiss Me Deadly as a surprise to a couple of guys as in the whole thing. And I was like, well, I don't need a wig. Like, when my hair is big and down, it is enormous. And it's orangey bleachy. You can kind of see I just did my roots. Yeah, they were like, hey, can you send us a photo? Because we were looking for we wanted to look like the album cover with like the leather and the hair, and I was like, okay. So I pulled what I could from my own wardrobe, and my hair has been like up and flat for days, and so I just like did the big 80s hair thing as much as I could. And I sent them a photo and I was like, apologies for the short notice. My hair is very flat today. But I did have a moment of like, the only place I can get an 80s hair metal wig on short notice would be that place. So I'm hoping I don't have to do it. All right, chapter 3. This is my life. Marvelous, had said Vohm when he got Sham the job on the Medes. It's marvelous. You're not a child anymore. You're quite old enough for work, and there's nothing better than a doctor. And where else were you going to learn as fast and as deep as on a mole train's doctor, eh? What logic is that? Sham had wanted to shout, but how could he? Enthusiastic, hairy, barrel-shaped Vom een Surap, Sham's cousin or something, relative on his mother's side by a thread of unsnarlable connections, one of the two who had raised Sham, was not a tradesman. Vom kept house for a captain. The only people, however, he held in higher regard than molars were doctors, which was not surprising given how much of his time Sham's other cousinish surrogate parent, stooped, nervy, angulous Trus y Verba, spent with them. And they were mostly kind, too, to the boisterous old hypochondriac. Sham could no more turn down the work Truce and Vom had arranged for him than he could have trod dog muck and railsea earth into the old man's clothes. It wasn't as if he had anything else to suggest, rack his brains though he did. He'd been fretfully kicking his heels long enough since ending school, his time at which had also been spent, if more youthfully, kicking his heels. Sham felt sure there was something he fervently wanted to do, and to which he was excellently suited, which made the more frustrating that he could not say what it was. Too vague about his interests for further study, too cautious in company, perhaps a little bruised by less than stellar school days, to thrive in sales or service. Too young and sluggish to excel at heavy work, Sham's tryings out of various candidate activities left him het up. Vom and Truce were patient, but concerned. Maybe he had tried to venture more than once. I mean, what about... But the two men would always catch and interrupt his drift on that topic in uncharacteristic accord. Absolutely not. No way, said Truce. Even if there was someone who could train with, and you know there ain't, this is Stregai. It's dangerous and dubious. And you know how many beggars there are tried and failed to make that a living? You have to have a certain... He had eyed Sham gently. You're too, much too, Vom had said. Too what? Thought Sham. He tried for fury at Vom's hesitation, but only got as far as gloom. Too wet? Is that it? Too nice, lad, Truce had concluded and beamed. To try his end at salvage. Eager to give him a gently caring shove, to be an adult bird nudging a fledgling into squawking terrified first flight, Vom had pulled a favor and secured mole train-based apprenticeship with Bremlo for his ward. Life of the mind, time weak, and teamwork, and a sure trade too, Vom had said. And it'll get you out of this place. See the world! When he had told Sham, beaming, Vom had blown a kiss at the little clicking portrait of Sham's mother and father. It cycled on a 3-second exposure, an endless loop. You'll love it! So far, love of the life had been evasive. But to his own surprise, when he woke after that night of butchery, though the first noise out of him was a yelp and the second a whimper, so stiff and bone-battered was Sham, and though he staggered out of the cabin as if in rusted-up armor, when he came and saw the grey sun through the up-sky clouds and the swirling rail gulls, and his comrades taking hacksaws to the hosed-down pillars of the moldy-warp skeleton, even still feeling like an impostor at he knew not even what, Sham was lifted. A kill so big. The mood aboard was good. Drammen served breakfast mole meat. Even he, ash-colored and cadaverous, a cook who looked like a scrawny dead man and had never liked Shem at all, slopped broth into Sham's bowl with something almost like a grin. The crew whistled as they wound rope and oiled machinery, played quoits and backgammon on the car-top decks, swaying expertly with the train. Sham hesitated, hankering, but blushed to remember his previous participation in the hoop-throwing. He felt fortunate the crew had let slide what had looked likely to become his permanent nickname, Captain Rubbish Aim. Oh, were you ever like that in school? So bad at sport? I was. I never got a nickname like Captain Rubbish Aim, but at least he would have been a captain instead of Private Rubbish Aim. I'm just saying. He went back to watching penguins. He took photographs of them with his cheap little camera. The flightless charmers bickered and clattered their beaks on the islets they jostlingly inhabited. Hunting, they would dive into the interline ground, the earth of the rail sea between the metal, and with their big shovel-shaped bills, their adapted claw feet and muscled wings, they would tunnel aggressively for yards, burst squawking up again, with some subterrestrial grub wriggling in their beaks. They might be prey in turn, chased by a fanged meerkat, a badger, predatory chipmunk packs, flurrying hunters at which Sham would stare, and which some of his trainmates strained with nets to snare. You know, I've never realized this, because I've never read this book out loud, but it's musical. They've written this rhythmic, like you're on a train. Kukum, 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 ka-pa-pa-pa-pa, 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 ka-pa-pa-pa-pa. And often the end of paragraphs have almost like a rhyming couplet or some sort of melodic flow. I love it. Because this is a fantasy science fiction alternate world story, there are a lot of made-up words and slang. So if anything comes across your ear or continues to come across your ear that doesn't make any sense, just drop it in the comments and I will attempt to explain it. The lady's journey was winding. Sham stared wistfully at each jag of salvage the switchers steered them past. As if one of them, that wire-wrapped stub of wheel, that dust-scored refrigerator door, the glowing thing like a segment missing grapefruit embedded in the shale of a shore, might wake up and do something. Could happen. Sometimes it did. He thought his attentions were sneaky, till he noticed the first mate and doctor watching him. Mbende laughed at Sham's blush. Fremlow did not. Young man, the doctor looked patient. Is this sort of thing, then, with a gesture at whatever ancient discarded object it was they were left behind in the dust, for which you pine? Sham could only shrug. They interrupted a group of person-sized star-nosed moles. The mateys snared 2 before the labor got away. A labor is the collective noun of moles. Bet you didn't know that. Now you do. Sham was bewildered at the sight of those kills, the The squeals of those animals made him wince more than the enormous slaughter of the bellowing southern moldywarp. Still, it was more meat and more fur. Sham snuck by the diesel car to see how full their holds were, to gauge how soon they would have to dock. Fremlow gave him more dull things to take apart and label and put back together again, to learn how the body worked. The doctor would examine the results of these macabre surgeries in horror. Fremlow put diagrams in front of him at which Sham stared as if studying. Fremlow tested him on beginner medicine, at which Sham performed so consistently badly, the doctor was almost more impressed than irritated. Sham sat on deck, his legs dangling over the rushing earth, waiting for an epiphany. He had known soon after the journey started that medicine and he were not to be close friends. So he had auditioned fascinations, tried scrimshaw, journal keeping, caricature, tried to pick up the languages of foreign crewmates, hovered by card games to learn gambler skills. These efforts at interest did not take. Northish, and the frost grew less severe, plants less cowed, people stopped singing and started arguing again. The most robust of these altercations blossomed into fights. More than once, Sham had to scurry out of the path of roaring men and women, knocking bells and leather out of each other at the most minimal provocations. I know what we need, Sham thought, as ill-tempered officers ordered the perpetrators to clean the heads. He'd overheard second-hand train word about what to do when tensions got great. We need some R&R. It was not long ago he had not known what those R's might stand for. Perhaps bored women and men, he thought, needed rice and remembrance, rollers and restitution, rhyme and reason. One drab afternoon under sweaty clouds, Sham joined a circle of off-duty trainsfolk hallooing on a car top. They gathered around a rope coil arena in which two grumpy insects lumbered at each other. They were tank beetles, heavy iridescent hand-sized things, solitary by nature and pugnacious when the nature was denied. So perfect for this nasty sport. They hesitated, seemingly disinclined to engage. Their handlers prodded them with hot sticks until they grudgingly charged, shells clattering like angry plastic. It was interesting, Sham supposed, but their owner's relentless provocation of their insects wasn't pleasant to watch. In cages, in his colleagues' hands, he saw a burrowing lizard with anxious reptile smear, a meerkat, and a spite-furred digging rat. Beetles were only the warm-up fight. Sham shook his head. It wasn't as if the beetles were any less press-ganged or unwilling than rats or rock rabbits, but even annoyed at the one-sidedness of his own mammalian solidarity, Sham couldn't help feeling it. He backed away and retreated right into Yakshan Worley. Sham staggered and careened into other onlookers, leaving a trail of annoyed growls. "Where you going?" Yakshan shouted. "Too soft to watch?" No, thought Sham, just not in the mood. "Come here, soft belly, soft heart," Yakshan cackled, accompanied by Valtus Lind and a few others who could be bothered with the casual cruelties. A patter of slang, name-calling, reminded Sham unpleasantly of school. He flushed beacon bright. "It's only a joke, Sham," Vernon shouted. "Grow up! Get back here!" But Sham left, thinking of the insults of those beetles pointlessly crippling each other, and the scared animals waiting their turn. They passed another molar, diesel-powered like the Mateys, its flags announcing it from Rockvane. The crews waved at each other. Wouldn't know how to mole if a suicidal moldy warp talked them right through it, the Mateys crew muttered through their smiles. Rockvane this and that, they went on, creative imprecations about their southern native. The rails here precluded an easy gam, a social meetup, exchange of letters and news. So it was with surprise that Sham saw Gansifer Brownall, the glum and intricately tattooed second mate, unroll a hunt kite of the type they flew in Clarion, her austere, far-off home. What's she doing? He thought. The captain attached a letter to the kite. Brownall sent it coiling like a live thing through the air, under the roiling, shadowy smear of the up-sky. 2, 3 swoops, and she dive-bombed into the Rockvane train. Within minutes, the Rockvaners threw up a final pennant. Sham stared as they receded. He was still learning the language of flags, but this one he knew. In response to the captain's question, it said, "Sorry. No." All right. More of this or a chapter of Hitchhiker's Guide? Drop it in the comments. Okay, we'll read the next 2 chapters of this, which are very short, because one of them actually explains the world of the Railsea. All right. And I'm out of tea, so that means this is it. Chapter 4 of Railsea by China Millville. Ugh, just the legs. Sweaty, sweaty legs. God, stuck. I'm stuck. Send help. Okay. All right, darlings. Fantasy palette. Oh, she said some guide. Oh, I gotta say. Yeah, let's do some guide. Let's see if the strange creatures who live in my room apparently moved my bookmark again. I think it's in the right place. I don't think the gnomes moved my bookmark this week. Okay. Arthur, we've learned about the deep thought. We've learned that the Earth was built by a corporation based on Magorthea. That Slarty Bartfast was the one who built all the fjords, and that infinity is very boring, actually. And we were only 5 minutes away from the answer to life, the universe, and everything being presented when the Vogons destroyed Earth. So here we are. Chapter 27. Slarty Bardfast study was a total mess. Like the results of an explosion in a public library, the old man frowned as they stepped in. remember, Slutty Birdfast is played by Bill Nighy, with the British actor, the T-Rex hands. This is my impression of him. Oh, terribly unfortunate, he said. A diode blew in one of the life support computers. When we tried to revive our cleaning staff, we discovered that they'd been dead for nearly 90,000 years. Who's going to clear away the bodies? That's what I want to know. Look, why don't you sit yourself over there and let me plug you in? Who's going to clean up the bodies? Good question. He gestured Arthur toward a chair which looked as if it had been made out of the rib cage of a stegosaurus. It was made out of the rib cage of a stegosaurus, explained the old man as he pottered about, fishing bits of wire out from under tottering piles of paper and drawing instruments. Here, he said, hold these, and passed a couple of striped wire ends to Arthur. The instant he took hold of them, a bird flew straight through him. He was suspended in mid-air and totally invisible to himself. Beneath him was a pretty, tree-lined city square, and all around it, as far as the eye could see, were white concrete buildings of airy, spacious design, but somewhat the worse for wear. Many were cracked and strained with rain. Today, however, the sun was shining, a fresh breeze danced lightly through the trees, and the odd sensation that all the buildings were quietly humming was probably caused by the fact that the square and all the streets around it were thronged with cheerful, excited people. Somewhere a band was playing, brightly colored flags were fluttering in the breeze, and the spirit of the carnival was in the air. Arthur felt extraordinarily lonely, stuck up in the air above it all, without so much as a body to his name. But before he had time to reflect on this, a voice rang out across the square and called for everyone's attention. A man standing on a brightly dressed dais before the building which clearly dominated the square was addressing the crowd over a tannoy. "O people who wait in the shadow of deep thought, honored descendants of Roomfondel and Magic Thesey, the greatest and most truly interesting pundits the universe has ever known, the time of waiting is over." Wild cheers broke out amongst the crowd. Flags, streamers, and wolf whistles sailed through the air. The narrower streets looked rather like centipedes rolling over on their backs and frantically waving their legs in the air. Do it with me, everybody. Muppet flail. 7.5 million years our race has waited for this great and hopefully enlightening day. The day of the answer. Hurrahs burst from the ecstatic crowd. Yay! Never again will we wake up in the morning and think, who am I? What is my purpose in life? Does it really, cosmically speaking, matter if I don't get up and go to work? For today, we will finally learn once and for all the plain and simple answer to all these nagging little problems of life, the universe, and everything. As the crowd erupted once again, Arthur found himself gliding through the air and down toward one of the large, stately windows on the first floor of the building behind the dais from which the speaker was addressing the crowd. He experienced a moment's panic as he sailed straight towards the window, which passed when a second or so later he found he had gone right through the solid glass without apparently touching it. No one in the rooms remarked on his peculiar arrival, which is hardly surprising, as he wasn't there. He began to realize that the whole experience was merely a recorded projection which knocked 6-track 70mm onto a crooked hat. The room was much as Slarty Barfast had described it. In 7.5 million years, it had been well looked after and cleaned regularly every century or so. The ultra-mahogany desk was worn at the edges, the carpet a little faded now, but the large computer terminal sat in sparkling glory on the desk's leather top, as bright as if it had been constructed yesterday. 2 severely dressed men sat respectfully before the terminal and waited. "The time is nearly upon us," said one, and Arthur was surprised to see a word suddenly materialize in the thin air just above the man's neck. The word was Lunkqualv, and it flashed a couple of times and then disappeared again. Before Arthur was able to assimilate this, the other man spoke, and the word Furu appeared by his neck. 75,000 generations ago, our ancestors set this program in motion. And in all that time, we will be the first to hear the computer speak. An awesome prospect, Furu, agreed the first man, and Arthur then suddenly realized he was watching a recording with subtitles. "We are the ones who will hear the answer to the great question of life, the universe, and everything." "Shh," said Lunkfall, with a slight gesture. "I think Deep Thought is preparing to speak." There was a moment's expectant pause while panels slowly came to life on the front of the console. Lights flashed on and off experimentally and settled down into a business-like pattern. A soft, low hum came from the communication channel. "Good morning," Deep Thought said at last. Good morning, oh Deep Thought. Do you, that is it, have an answer for you?" interrupted Deep Thought majestically. "Yes, I have." The 2 men shivered with expectancy. Their waiting had not been in vain. "There really is one. There really is one." "There really is one." "To everything? To the great question of life, the universe, and everything?" "Yes." Both of the men had trained for this moment. Their lives had been in preparation for it. They had been selected at birth as those who would witness the answer, but even so, they found themselves gasping and squirming like exciting children. "Are you ready to give it to us?" "I am." "Now?" "No," said Deep Thought. They both licked their dry lips. "Though I don't think that you are going to like it." "Doesn't matter. We must know it. Now." "Now?" "Yes, now." "All right." And the computer settled into silence again. The 2 men fidgeted. The tension was unbearable. "You're really not going to like it." "Tell us!" "All right. The answer to the great question, yes, of life, the universe, and everything, yes, is... 42, said Deep Thought, with infinite majesty and calm. Chapter 28. It was a long time before anyone spoke. Out of the corner of his eye, Fuhu could see the sea of tense, expectant faces in the square outside. "We're going to get lynched, aren't we?" he said. "It was a tough assignment," said Deep Thought mildly. 42! Is that all you've got to show for 7.5 million years of work? "I checked it very thoroughly," said the computer, "and that quite definitely is the answer. I think the problem, to be quite honest with you, is that you've never actually known what the question is. But it was the great question, the ultimate question of life, the universe, and everything." "Yes," Deep Thought said, with an air of one who suffers full gladly. "But what actually is it?" The slow, stupefied silence crept over the men as they stared at the computer and then at each other. "Well, it's just everything. It's everything." "Exactly. So once you do know what the question actually is, you'll know what the answer means." "Oh, terrific," he said, flinging aside his notebook and wiping away a tiny tear. "Look, all right. Can you just please tell us the question?" "The ultimate question?" "Yes, of life, the universe, and everything." "Yes!" Deep Thought pondered for a moment. "Tricky. But can you do it?" Deep Thought pondered for a moment and finally said, "No." Both men collapsed into their chairs in despair. "But I'll tell you who can." They both looked up sharply. "Who? Tell us!" Suddenly, Arthur began to feel his apparently non-existent scalp begin to crawl as he found himself moving slowly but inexorably forward toward the console. But it was only a dramatic zoom on the part of whoever had made the recording, he assumed. "I speak of none but the computer that is to come after me," intoned Deep Thought, his voice regaining its accustomed declamatory tones. "A computer whose merest operational parameters I am not worthy to calculate. And yet, I will design it for you. A computer that can calculate the question to the ultimate answer. A computer of such infinite and subtle complexity that organic life itself shall form part of its operational matrix. And you shall take on new forms and go down into the computer to navigate its 10 million year program. Yes, I shall design this computer for you, and I shall name it also for you, and it shall be called the Earth." What it all mean? Fuhu gaped at Deep Thought, and great incisions appeared down the length of his body. Lunkfall, too, suddenly sustained horrific gashes from nowhere. The computer console blotched and cracked. The walls flickered and crumbled, and the room crashed upward into its own ceiling. Slarty Bartfast was standing in front of Arthur, holding the 2 wires. It was the end of tape. And that is where we will end it, because the story shifts, and it's very hot, and it's the end of the night. Here we are, darlings. I have been your GlamourHobo bedtime tale teller, Carmel. I work sometimes as your Metatron on the Nat 21 Adventures, and I have dropped in the chat where you can go and experience a show that just dropped on Thursday that I did an immersive audio experiment about fighting back oblivion with the goddess of memory by your side. I invite you all to go and get yourself a $9 ticket and enjoy a 30-minute respite from the meat suit world and into the collective unconsciousness of the underworld. I'm very proud of it. I sing on it. I storytell on it. It's an immersive experience for all of you. I hope you love it and enjoy it. Please tell me what you think of it. And as always, if you've been nourishing the service, as Mr. Rubebrald says, you can drop me a tip at the bottom. But if you want to get into bed with me for a little bit longer, you can always be a patron. That is right. So, my darlings, as usual, it has been a pleasure and a privilege to be with you here on a Monday night on the Nat21 Twitch channels. Remember, there is a ton of stuff going on right now on the channel, including the Kickstarter for the Mag of Holding. So please find your way to that. It's right there on Kickstarter, Mag of Holding, Pirates and Seafaring. And I bid you all good night.